that always flinches at the high notes. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow until you find your dream. That was the most embarrassing off-key thing I've ever sang in my life. Okay, my sister is going to be laughing at me. But the point remains, despite obstacles, you too can open doors for students to achieve through technology. Despite obstacles, you too can open doors for students to achieve through technology and foster their motivation to create and communicate. Start out by providing tools for students to build solid knowledge foundations, become efficient researchers, and by giving them access to the tools that they love and making them educational. So many people wonder how I started out teaching and writing so young. Am I naturally smart, they wonder? Although I would love to say that's the case, it's unfortunately not quite true. The answer is in large part due to technology. If the road to innovation is a battle, the biggest weapons in our arsenal are the work of students and teachers in the digital world. This includes podcasts, TV shows, blogs, video conferencing, and much more. My story began at the age of 4. My parents had always been big advocates of reading. They would read to us. Oh, weren't we cute back then? They would read to us when we were little. As you can see, I'm the tiny little person sandwiched in between. That's my mom and that's my sister when we are all much littler. And my sister will kill me for including a picture of her when she was little. But my parents were big advocates of reading, so they would read to us before we went to bed and share some of their favorite stories with us. So from a young age, my sister Adriana and I equated the pleasure of reading with privilege. It shocked me to learn at the tender age of 5 that not everybody liked to read. That was a really stunning realization. So in hindsight, I'm surprised I didn't realize earlier. My sister and I always had access to computers. There are some great pictures of us when we were little by computers, as you can see there. And we learned how to type and email. At the age of 6, my mom actually bought me my own computer. It was a little black laptop, and I was able to type up my stories on there. Because I was a little lacking in the handwriting department, the typing gave me confidence to advance and to write my stories. Soon I had amassed a large collection of work, which I then published, and it became my book, Flying Fingers. My computer gave me new ways of publishing and reaching out to the world. I started my own blog, aptly titled, of course, Adora's blog. There's not much else I could have called it, on my website, adorasweetalk.com. So I posted frequently about my daily life and reading and writing. On my blog, I wrote not just on my own blog, but also on an education blog, The Educator's Royal Treatment. I correspond over email with other young authors and students I've taught through video conferencing. Oh, and video conferencing, I teach every day through that. And there is another story to this. The people who discovered me, and, well, I shouldn't put that in quotes, who really discovered me, have helped me by giving me lots of technology. So where is Jan Zanitas from here? Yay, hello, everybody. Jan gave me my first video conferencing unit, my first and only video conferencing unit, and through that unit, I have taught over 300 schools around the country, over 400 actually, around the nation, around the world. So let's have a round of applause for Jan Zanitas. Thank you so much. So this brings up another point that I wanted to discuss. Much of my success has not been due to the fact that I'm a genius, actually the idea that I'm a genius, which I'm not, by the way, but rather the help that others have given me, the support that I've gotten from others. And that is a really important thing that you need to realize. Not all students are able to just go out there and speak in front of a crowd. It's really the people that help them along the way, and you can have that role as well. Now, people often support me in the lovely, enviable form of technology. So my house's basement is now a big collection of all kinds of technology that I use every day. I video conference, I live stream, I use an active board. It's many different kinds of technology opening many different kinds of doors for me. A master key, if you will. Students are already experts at opening doors to worlds of gaming and entertainment, but using keys to open different kinds of doors, like those in education, gives you some exercise with flexibility, exercises your wrists. In other words, finding new ways to apply technology you already know well is a great way to expand critical thinking skills. But remember, even master keys can't just stick themselves in a lock by themselves. They need someone to turn them. And that's where you come in. I couldn't have done everything I've done without A, the technology, and B, the support of the people around me. But imagine for one moment that my parents had been scared of technology, that it was restricted and treated as toxic waste, not to be touched by vulnerable youngsters like us, that I had never learned to type, that I was insecure about my handwriting skills, and thus about my creative writing skills, had never amassed a large collection of work, and never published a book. At that point, my speaking here would be virtually impossible. But the truth is that every day there are students who are still struggling to write, who are still struggling to type, who don't have a whole lot of access to technology, who have limited access to computers, and have difficulty finding creative ways to channel their thoughts to use technology. So next time you have second thoughts about technology, about 21st century tools in the classroom, think, are you stopping an author, an engineer, a teacher, an astronomer, or even the next president? Admittedly, many technology problems or technology accessibility problems have their root in monetary problems. I know that a lot of school districts are feeling the pinch of the economic recession, and that finding funding for basic needs can sometimes be difficult. In the face of difficulties for paying for things like teacher salaries and school maintenance, then technology might seem sometimes like a luxury. However, there are many free or low-cost options out there, Google Docs, OpenOffice, and for everything that you think is, oh man, that's really expensive, there's usually a low-cost option, and there's usually a way you can find the money. What's more, spending on school technology is not so much money lost as an investment in student futures, and your futures as well. Despite the innovations technology provides, many school districts severely limit internet access. So one school I video conferenced with only let students access 2 websites. 2 websites out of the millions out there. Raise your hand if you know of more than 2 good educational websites. Raise your hand if you know of more than 2 good educational. I'm seeing mostly raised hands. I know of a few off the top of my head. Time for Kids, National Geographic, Bartleby. There are so many great websites, National Geographic, History. The list goes on and on and on. There's really a whole treasure trove of learning out there that you can find on the internet. I understand that lots of school districts block websites for security and privacy concerns, but there are many great safe websites out there. So switching topics slightly, an article in the Washington Post actually caught my eye recently. So the article was called "Movie Theater Churches Are Catering to Kids," or Catering to Kids. And it was, as you may have guessed from that title over there, how churches are catering to kids, and how church services that take place in movie theaters appeal to them. So one movie theater chain houses about 200 churches, and I think that education has something to learn from this example. While I'm not suggesting that you set up shop in a movie theater, although seeing Life Cycle of a Frog would be so cool on the big screen, then I am saying that you should use something that kids already know and love, something that kids already use. In this case, technology. And besides, if kids get disillusioned with their favorite technologies and think, man, this can be used for education, it must not be cool, then you'll have at least one less annoying piece of gadgetry on your hands. If it can't be used for education, it probably is not cool, and if it can, then it probably is. Although the theme of this conference is paving student pathways, the title of my presentation is, as you saw, opening doors for student achievement. So this works for me, since paths usually lead to doors somewhere anyway. I've talked a lot about technology this and technology that, and I just wanted to remind you that just like a beautiful dress doesn't make a fashion icon, I think that dog has a little ways to go, equipment alone won't make an innovative classroom. It's really about you. You must innovate, and you must have the attitude going forward that I'm going to forge this new path. It's not just about technology. The innovative classroom is truly created by you. If technology is the master key, then the teacher, after all, is the one who has to turn it. The technology coordinator, director, or coach is the one who makes sure that the edges fit into the lock. And the librarian or media specialist helps oil the hinges of the door, keeping those knowledge cogs running. The administrator makes copies of the keys and hands them out, hint, hint. And so in the process of unlocking doors to student achievement, it's so important to have openness. Openness is a great word because you'd think it needs a dash, but it actually doesn't. So raise your hand if you consider yourself open-minded about continued exploration of this brave new world of education technology? Raise your hand if you consider yourself open-minded about exploring this brave new world of education technology. Great! We should have no problems in that department then. So the other half of openness is the ability that technology gives us to break down and go beyond classroom walls. It's not just the four walls of the classroom are staying there like that and everyone's sitting here. It's the ability that it gives you to go beyond that, to connect, collaborate, and create through technologies like engaging online curriculum and video conferencing, which allows you to really go beyond, to connect with others, and to bring learning from the outside world into your classroom. And you can use such multimedia content to really pique your students' interest. So for one example, why just read a textbook entry about lizards when you could see COSI Columbus's Reptiles Live program over video conferencing? So here's a snapshot. I found this on CILC, the Center for Learning and Collaboration. So I typed in COSI because I knew I was coming to Columbus, and I was able to find Reptiles Live. So that's really cool how you can show students that learning is really all around them. When you have this multimedia content, you're bringing learning into your classroom. You're going beyond the four walls of the classroom. Through distance learning, you can learn from field experts and eyewitnesses to historical events. After reading my book, then students are able to meet the author over video conferencing, and it shows them in many ways that authors aren't abstract concepts, but real people who live and breathe and talk, kind of like reptiles. So connecting and seeing and hearing is a really great way of showing that learning is all around you. So when I teach students about reading, writing, and social studies topics on video conferencing, I often see kids looking in awe at the video conferencing monitor and saying, "We're on TV." Even after learning that no, they're not quite on TV, the shocker that comes after learning that I can see and hear their every move is really incredible. And it holds their attention. What's more, I use online streaming and record videos to share my teaching, not to brag, but I think that I'm able to hold their attention for almost an hour because it's interesting instruction coupled with this amazing technology. And technology makes it all possible. Even veteran video conferencing students who've seen the technology in action before get excited when we start a session because they're excited, they're captivated by the content. Now, one of the most important things I want to tell you about today is student empowerment. After all, we students are a rather disenfranchised group, don't you think? We can't drive, we can't vote, we can't drink. That was not so important, actually. But I suppose that compared to kids in many other countries, we grow up with a lot of choices. We're able to choose our kinds of clothes, we're able to choose our kinds of cereals, and music, and what we want to be when we grow up. But when it comes to education, suddenly a lot of our choices are just taken away. And it's important that we have a say in our education. In other words, power to the students. Contrary to popular belief, this does not mean rioting and chaos and the guillotine. It is the idea that students should be able to excel using tools that they love and use a lot. I saw a story on ABC News with Diane Sawyer, which I watch religiously, by the way, and it was about kids' media consumption. So I'm going to actually open this up, hoping that the internet is working. Oops. I think I was getting a little feedback off the microphone there. Okay, it looks like, sorry about that, the internet, I would have to type in something, that's okay. Well, I actually wrote down some of the things from that story, and apparently the average kid spends 7.5 hours a day engaged with technology. 7.5 hours a day out of 24. Don't you wish your students spend that much time on education? 7.5 hours would be great. Although it might be going a bit far to expect your students to spend 7 hours on homework, it is possible to fight fire with fire. In other words, use students' existing knowledge and use of technology to think about technology in new ways. So students on average spend only 38 minutes in this survey on good old-fashioned reading every day. 38 minutes. So you and I may find it preposterous that the average student spends only minutes reading as opposed to hours on technology, but how many minutes a day do you spend on technology? If you said 38, then they might find that equally preposterous. Has anyone heard the saying, "When in Rome, do as the Romans do"? Raise your hand. I see a lot of hands up. Well, the most complimentary thing you can do for your students is speak our language or use our tools. That is, find ways to apply technologies that we use every day, like social networking, to education in the form of creations like educational networking. When we have to rack our brains for new applications of familiar technology, then it gives us lots of practice for problem solving in later life. So raise your hand if your school has a filter on internet. I'm seeing a lot of raised hands. So many of those filters are just filtering out specifically websites that you don't want students to access, but some filters only let students access 1 or 2 websites, which I think is not a good idea because tight restrictive filters on school internet provide short-term solutions. Kids will be able to access the internet as much as they want when they get home, and so you need to teach them safe and effective browsing techniques in school. And if you were scared that kids might get run over by crossing the street, do you tell them never ever cross streets? No, you hold their hands when crossing the road at first and say, look both ways when you cross the street so that by tomorrow you won't be dead meat. The dead meat bit is my addition. I heard a very interesting story on NPR, which is on in my house 24/7, about kids and internet searches. So they asked kids to find the vice president's birthday, what day it would be on next year. So Dr. Allison Druin, who helped conduct the study, said there were many children who just sat there and watched until they would find the information, as opposed to, hey, couldn't you do a keyword? Nope, this is what I do, I'll find it, don't worry. We had one child swear he was going to find the vice president's birthday next year in the SpongeBob SquarePants website. Somewhere in there, SpongeBob had it. End quote. This reveals a gaping hole when it comes to certain aspects of technology, and this is where you come in. You might think the kids are really great at everything technology, which is in some ways true, but in others, not. It's up to educators like you to empower us and help us make wise decisions when it comes to use of 21st century tools and internet usage, and when you trust us, we will return that trust. So according to an ABC 7 story about kids and social media, better communication is the key. Communication that is teaching kids judgment on how to be media literate. I want to stress judgment on how to be media literate. What does that mean? Well, that means evaluating whether one source is better than another, whether one source might not be so great to use, who owns a web page and whether that affects objectivity, and a plethora of other essential information. For instance, I was watching a speaker, Alan November, talk about the importance of evaluating website content. One website he mentioned was All About Explorers. So All About Explorers, oops, I'm sorry about that. If I can get it switched over to this computer that has internet on it, let's see, I should be able to open up the web page. The Ustream computer, can you open that up? Great, thank you. So you'll see on the side screens, All About Explorers. So let's say I want to find something about Francis Drake. Think this would be a good place to start out? All About Explorers, raise your hand if you think this would be a good web page to find information about Francis Drake. Okay, I'm seeing some raised hands. Let's go to Explorers A to Z and see if we can find Francis Drake. Okay, it looks like we have Sir Francis Drake here. Great. So let me just read some of this. Francis Drake was born around the year 1542 in Wayne, New Jersey.